Welcome back to the XT podcast, where we go beyond buzzwords and dive deep into how experience truly drives business growth. Today's guest is a powerhouse at the intersection of AI, customer feedback, and strategic growth. I'm speaking with Patricia Osorio, co-founder and chief commercial officer at Birdie.ai, one of the most exciting players in the customer intelligence space today. Birdie is an AI-powered voice of customer insights platform that transforms scattered, unstructured feedback into strategic, actionable gold. Their work is trusted by leading SaaS and fintech brands who want to reduce churn, boost retention, and make smarter, faster, effective decisions. In this episode, we unpack why most companies are drowning in feedback but starving for insights, how AI can go beyond dashboards and surfacing data to actually helping prioritize what matters to your customers and your bottom line. The pitfalls of Net Promoter Score, yes, the NPS, when taken at face value, and how to dig deeper into context and customer emotion. What it really takes to align teams across product, marketing, and CX using a single source of truth, and how to build a culture that doesn't just collect feedback but uses it to drive growth sustainably and systematically. Patricia also shares her thoughts on the evolution of voice of customer programs, how founders can think more strategically about insights, and why retention should be treated as the new growth engine. If you care about scaling with customer truth at the center, this one's unmissable. Let's get into it. Hello, Pat. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate you joining us at the XT podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Finally, we made it.
Finally, we made it, I know. And these are the best conversations, Pat, when it's natural, organic. We haven't really planned it yet. So I'm really excited, looking forward to a deep, insightful conversation.
Let's do it. I hope we have some good answers for the audience.
I'm sure there'll be. And in fact, let me start with the most talked about topic, which is NPS still relevant? Because I see so much of conversation, Pat, around NPS and CSAT are great metrics, but they may not be the right and the best measures for customer experience necessarily. That's on one side. And on the other side, I see that there's so much of tech and platform availability now that we organizations can really unearth lots of data points. There are a lot of eyes and the ears on the ground thanks to the tech, but I really doubt if the organizations are really listening and watching. There's so much of tech, a lot of data, but I'm not sure if the organization is truly listening. So in your experience, Pat, what do you think is fundamentally broken and what the organizations need to do to really leverage these metrics, these platforms the right way and drive the best customer experience?
Nice. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about the NPS and CSAT and like every day we see people posting something like and criticizing NPS and I'm one of the people that do it. And I think the problem is not NPS itself, but it's how companies are using it and how companies are seeing NPS as voice of customer, and it shouldn't be. So the NPS it was created as a metric that is part of a system. So there's part of a bigger program, a bigger idea of understanding what our customers are happy with, understanding what would make them become your promoters or not, and the things that are not, fix them. So it's all about
Right.
the process of listening. And as you mentioned, a lot of companies are not necessarily listening. They're collecting the data but not listening to what people are saying, understanding and then acting on that. And I think people are stopping in the beginning. So NPS is a good metric. It could be NPS, it could be CSAT, it could be CES. There are a lot of metrics that companies can use. But at the end, what is broken is that they are not seeing this as part of a process, seeing this as part of a program that needs to run, so things can be fixed. At the end, the goal is understanding what is not working and fix that. That's probably like number one thing that comes to my mind. Second, that metric only is not enough, because that's a metric that is a question you ask your
Right.
clients in a specific moment, right? So you're asking if they would recommend you or if they are happy with something, just is in one touch point of the journey, but they have like several other touch points with you. In these other touch points, they are also sharing their opinion. They are calling you to ask a question or to solve a problem. that's an interaction. They are writing a review publicly, they are talking to somebody in social media. These are all touch points. And a lot of companies don't see them as part of a bigger concept of voice of customer. They are actually siloed. They are being treated separately by different
Yes.
teams. They're each one doing their own analysis. So I think all of that is making the understanding of voice of customer smaller than it should be. And of course, like collecting NPS is becoming more and more of a challenge, right? Because a lot of people like are not wanting to give
Yes.
answers to surveys anymore. So
Correct.
the challenge with NPS, I think that's soon, and I see a lot of companies already trying to do that. How can I infer NPS from these interactions? So I don't need to
Nice.
ask you if you would recommend me or not. I can know if you would recommend me or not based on everything that happened with you, what you said in an interaction, how you were served, how you were treated, what happened in your journey. So I think that this is real voice of customer. And most of companies, when they tell me like, oh, I have a voice of customer program, and then you ask, what does that mean? It normally means, oh, I'm sending NPS service to my clients, and I'm like
Right.
putting it together and understanding like what are their liking, disliking, sentiment. So it's not that. I think the view that voice of customer is only that, it's the first problem that we need to tackle, is the first mindset that we need to change.
Beautiful. Let me unpack this because your answer has now opened up multiple tracks and channels. One of the things you mentioned that NPS is not a program, but rather a process, a mindset, a much overarching thing beyond just sending a survey and getting a scored input. How do we move or shift the organization from this program mindset to the actual process mindset, even the voice of customer that you rightly talked about, that rather than thinking voice of customer program as an NPS program, how do you
Mhm.
make that shift happen from it to be a much overarching data collection and activation exercise which is much beyond NPS?
The first thing I would say is exactly knowing that it's much more of a process, and
Right.
going back to the voice of customer, when you talk to companies, oh, I have a voice of customer program, and then we have a meeting where we present a voice of customer dashboards or reports. And then when you look at these dashboards or reports, you're pretty much seeing literally just like numbers for visibility.
Yes.
If you enter in a meeting and the meeting is all about reporting, that's probably not a good voice of customer meeting, because a good voice of customer meeting should be about making decisions, should be
Right.
about seeing what's happening. And of course, you need to report what's happening, but you need to mostly enter with the idea of, I'm going to make tough decisions here to know what to prioritize, to fix what's broken, and what's broken
Sure.
should come from this reporting so I can get the results. So the act mindset, knowing that you need to act more than just report, just give visibility, I think is the number one thing that companies need to do and that they need to know. And I think like starting with like, oh, do I have a process where I'm constantly bringing what people are saying and like using that to make decisions, not only to tell what's happening. I think that's the first and most important step. Second, again, I think analyzing sentiment is nice, is very interesting, but sentiment and volumes shouldn't be the only two metrics we look at in those conversations. Because again, for you to make decisions, you need to talk about business metrics, and
Right.
telling if the sentiment is positive or negative is good to help you understand what is the thermometer of the relationship, but that's not what's going to drive change with a product leader or with another executive. So you need to bring metrics that speak the business language. You need to talk about how much that problem is impacting revenue, how much that problem is impacting retention, how much that problem is making something that is a company and a business goal not happen, because that friction point is in between the customer and the result that we want. So and that's another very big piece and another
Right.
common problem I see when talking to companies that are implementing a voice of customer program or trying to do something around that. And the third, of course, and the reason why we created Birdie is because it's hard to do it, right? You're
Yes.
talking about change management, you're talking about not only reporting, but also deeply understanding what are the problems, how much they're impacting the business. You need to quantify those problems across the board. And in some companies, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of pieces of feedback that you need to put together and understand. So You need to have a process that is scalable and that can happen constantly. So continuous improvement logic and mindset that we like to say that companies should have is there.
Beautiful. I'm wondering, Pat, is there a structural challenge to this as well? In the sense, is there a problem if the customer experience leadership is reporting into, let's say, marketing or tech, or sitting within a customer support success functional bucket? Because then by definition it's siloed, and the focus automatically would therefore be siloed, and the true cross functional enablement piece of the program won't come out. As you rightly said, the conversation should be outcome focused. What is in it for marketing and marketing KPIs, what is in it for sales and sales KPIs, instead of the NPS scores and sentiment analysis and volume analysis. So given all that, the work that you have done and your experience, Pat, is there a recommendation on where should CX leader report into? Should it be reporting directly into the CEO, or should it be defined as a cross functional role? What would be your advice on the structure itself?
Great question. That's a very hard to answer question because I don't think there's a right answer and a single
Sure,
answer to that.
sure.
Ideally, I think the most important thing is making sure that there is a C-level buy-in on customer experience. And
Right.
then if that exists, it's not really a problem if the customer experience person is reporting to the CEO or not, of course. Like the
Sure.
closer you are to the CEO, the better. As long as the person that is responsible for that has the mindset that we just talked about, that I know that I need to get this data and use it to make decisions, not only in my team, but also to influence other teams to make decisions.
Right.
You already have like the most important things. You have the executive buy-in, the CEO, and the customer-centric culture there or trying to be infused in the company. And then you have like somebody that knows that this data needs to be used to act. Normally, like the CX person needs to be seen as that person that when they enter the room, like they're going to bring uncomfortable truth to the
Right.
table, and you're going to provoke people to change because you're bringing things that are not working. You can also bring things that are working, of course, like, but focusing on fixing, like bringing things that are not working. But if I needed to answer the question, I would probably say that either the ideal for me is either that it's directly reporting to the CEO in a operations customer role or anything like that, or closer to product. Um,
Got it.
I believe that if it's closer to marketing, and again, it depends on the company culture and what marketing is responsible for the organization, the chances that it's much more worried about sentiment and about
Right.
like more less actionable uses of the data for the product are higher.
So well said. So well said, Pat. And even in my experience, I've seen that it so much depends on the individual's prior experience as well, because so many CX leaders come from a support service background, or many of them come from a market research, customer insights background, that by the sheer exposure and experience, they have a distinct lens towards CX. And what you are recommending, irrespective of the structure, is for the leader to have a cross functional mindset first, for the function to become truly cross functional. And that's a great advice from you, Pat. Thank you for that. In fact, then let me go back to the earlier point you made, which was also about not just think of CX as a data collection exercise, but rather data operationalization exercise. How do we activate the insights that we are gaining from the platform like Birdie, for example? How do you shift the momentum from issue reporting to outcome ownership? Because these are again two distinct tracks. One is, as you said, once a CX leader enters the room, the sentiment could be, now here we'll have a list of 10 issues being reported, versus when a leader enters the room, now we'll have 10 initiatives to be talked about to transform the outcomes that we all want to achieve. And these are completely two different reactions to what CX does.
Yeah. No, that's the change that needs to happen. And I would say first thing is the mindset. And I was actually talking to participating in a oops, I'll start again because somebody called
Yes,
me here,
please.
so I
No
think
problem.
so. I was actually participating in a podcast in a webinar yesterday where the person said that, oh, CX leader is a business leader, should be a business leader.
Nice.
And for me, that's very good statement because again, if the CX person is only talking about contact rate and support volume and like only thinking of support or only thinking of NPS, they are not going to make the impact that they should. because they are
Right.
not like doing the job of connecting the dots with the business. So you need to have a business mindset. You need to think of the business as a whole, the organization as a whole, to make CX happen. That's the first thing. Of course, CX, and that's a challenge, is not always, and most of the times actually, is not going to be the one that acts on the problem, but you need to call and you need to bring on board the teams that are going to act on the problem and make them accountable and make them want to fix that problem with you. And also in this conversation yesterday, we were talking about how starting small and getting one stakeholder in one business unit in one team and building a case with them is important, because then everybody else will see that example and will
Beautiful.
want to do the same, instead of you trying to push them like, oh, we need to fix this. They will come to you and say, oh, what do we need to fix? I want to do that. Like, help me make the right decision. So this change of mindset also comes with the example. But for me, again, being a business leader and thinking about the business and implementing that in a few key steps. One is making sure that when you bring problems to light, you're bringing them with context, you're bringing them with enough granularity and
Right.
quantification for people to act. And when I say that, the context is understanding the business, you need to understand. Granularity is, a lot of companies use AI to generate topics. So people are complaining about, if you're in a bank, invoices. Okay, but what about invoices? If you tell me that invoices have 70% of negative sentiment, that's not telling me anything. I can make a decision. You need to tell me that the problem is that I'm trying to pay my invoice and I'm getting an error in the app, just as a dummy example. Then you have like, oh, this is granular enough for me to understand and know what I need to act on, and connecting that to quantification. If you're not able to say that how many people are complaining about that
Right.
versus another problem with invoices, it's still going to be hard for you to prioritize, because then you have like 10 different problems in the same bucket, invoices, and you still can make a decision. And then after that, again, like only saying that the sentiment is negative, or that you have 10 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people talking about it, it's not enough. You need to know who are these people, how much money they are bringing to the company, what are the actions that they are trying to do that are not working, is this impacting engagement, is this impacting any other metric that I have. So the connection with the business metrics is important, because that's when you're speaking the language of the other team that probably has that as a KPI. And then when you give them contextualized feedback with enough granularity and telling the impact, they will say, wow, okay, this, you're definitely telling me what I need to work on, and I have confidence that you're bringing me real evidence-backed information that I can use.
Beautiful. In fact, the more I talk to leaders like you, Pat, the more it's easier for me to convey to my audience that how tough the role of a genuine CX leader is, because not only he or she has to have a cross functional domain knowledge, information, know how, but they have to have the tact to map CX efforts and outcomes to the business outcomes. On top of it, they have to do all of this in a way which doesn't come across as pushy or dictatorial or directional, but rather somebody who can get things moving by building peers and colleagues and building relationships and rapport. So it's a tough role. Would you advise or would you recommend that the CX leader has to have very strong soft skills to be able to drive this people management the right way? Because the people management and aligning the HODs, the head of departments, the head of functions first, or the internal advocacy will be the first foundational pillar for all the processes and platforms and transformations to happen later. Do you think that's the most important skill as well?
Yeah, there's one thing that I thought about, like what I said before, and that I think I should add to that, is that besides bringing all the data, and that relates to the skills, you also need to know how to manage a project or how to manage deliverables. Because again, even if you bring all
Right.
the data and the other teams are acting on that, but you have no visibility, you have no
Right.
control of what is being executed, or like you can't really tie it to the results, you can't really prove the ROI. So it's very important to have this piece where, like, almost like I know what are the initiatives, I know which initiatives are being tied to which problems, and then I can see that, oh, this problem is already being addressed by this initiative that this team's taking care of. It's going to happen that in the next month. So having this control, and again, going back to the voice of customer meeting, the voice of customer meeting should bring like, what are we working on? What did we
Right.
finish? What do we need to change now? So all this piece is very important also for the mindset. And in terms of skills, definitely the soft skill of like managing stakeholders and driving change is very important, because at the end everybody talks a lot about like how you're not directly leading anybody, but
Right.
you're leading a lot of people. I feel CX has the same, so you're not
Right.
directly necessarily leading these other things, but you need to influence them. You need to make them comfortable with making a decision based on your data, and you're normally bringing data that is pinpointing issues, problems in the process, in what you're delivering. But again, if you have a mindset that the problem is not with you, the problem is with the process, the experience, and
Right.
we're all trying to improve the experience, that's better. But definitely managing stakeholders and being able to influence people is a very important skill. Having analytical skills is also very important.
Sure.
I wouldn't say it's the most important thing you can have, like, especially as you grow as a leader. You can have people that are analytical supporting you, but knowing
Sure.
that you need to concatenate data and put together a bunch of data to help you make a more informed decision. I think that's also a very important skill.
Lovely. In fact, I had another conversation with Lynn Hunsaker, and she happened to mention, and also Sue Duris, who I talked to, just like you, exactly like you, that the CX leader should have the curiosity and passion for data to be able to make sense out of data, even if it's not a technical analytical capability, at least an ability to sift data, figure out what's important, what's not, and it's such an important skill to have. Thank you for sharing that, Pat. Coming to a much hot topic now, the most talked about buzzword, AI. I loved how you position this as well. You always say that AI is far more than chatbots in your posts, in your conversations. That's how you advocate as well. In your view, Pat, what's the real promise of AI, and what is it that most teams, especially the CX leaders and teams, get wrong about it? What's the future of AI in CX?
Yeah, it's funny that it's not that I'm against chatbots or using AI for that, but I feel that every time you're talking about AI in customer experience, the only thing that people think of is, oh, I'm going to automate my support. And that's necessary. Like, you need to deliver automation, like having chatbots at some point, especially for like the easier to address problems is great. But the provocation here is like, if you think of customer experience, great customer experience is not automating how you fix a problem or how you address a problem. More than fix is not having the problem, is making sure that the problem doesn't happen again. So
Right.
that's what's a real a great customer experience. So if you think of yourself as a customer, you don't want to talk to support. It doesn't matter if support is a person or an
Correct.
agent, an AI agent. You just want to go and have the experience and make it work. And
Right.
if it works smoothly, if the product's working smoothly, the service is working smoothly, you don't even need to talk to the agent. So that's what companies should aim to deliver when they are talking about delivering a great customer experience. And then fixing the problem, understanding the root cause of the problem and fixing it should be the end goal of any customer experience team or any company that aims to deliver like frictionless customer experience.
Right.
So the provocation here is like, great, you can add chatbots, but are you trying to understand if these problems can be fixed altogether so you don't even need to get support? That's probably what should be done, and that's the provocation that I always make. In terms of like how can AI can be used, I see that AI, first thing, which is exactly what we're addressing with Birdie, is how can AI make CX more strategic by helping CX do everything we just said in our conversation so far. So how can you help CX get data, transform this data into actionable insights, telling you what should be fixed in the product and why that should be fixed and what impact you should make. So how can you use that to assess what is wrong, assess where the friction points are so you can act on them, and do that with much more efficiency and with much more confidence. That's definitely one of the usages that I recommend. And actually, not only for customer experience, this same use case could be done in multiple areas of an organization so you
Sure.
can learn and improve. The continuous improvement mindset can be applicable to any other area. And then from there, what is interesting is, that's what I see as the next level for any automation that is happening there. How can you transform CX from a cost center, because everybody still sees CX as a
Right.
cost center, to a growth center. How can you use the opportunity when, if a customer came to you based on what they're doing, based on what happened with them, what's their history, who they are, you can use that to flip the switch and like, oh, actually, you could buy a new product. Actually, that's something that's better for you here, or even prevent them from having a problem. So how I think using AI for when they come to customer support for any reason, making sure that the experience becomes so good that they leave even more enchanted with the company and maybe buying something else, or like that, that's probably a great application of AI that we'll see happening soon.
So well said, Pat. In fact, to double click on the answer you gave about CX being a reactive function and being a cost center, and connect it to what you said earlier, that if we are reporting issues, then the higher the chances of the CX being taken up as a cost center. But the moment we start attributing or mapping issues to actions and deliverables and changes and transformations, and follow through and enable those actions and drive those impacts, that's when slowly the outcomes would be visible and CX would be attributed those outcomes as well. So that's where the growth would finally be attributed to CX. And I cannot agree more with how all these pillars that we talked about finally end up making CX the growth center that it should be ideally. I'm wondering, Pat, would it be possible for you to share one transformation story from a Birdie client where not only the CX impact, but that you managed to achieve through the engagement or the transformation, but the way client used to work earlier to how they managed to benefit from how they transformed their way of working.
Yes, I have a couple of examples that I can share. One, some are more specific, some are more generic, but
Sure.
maybe one that's very specific and that shows an example of impacting an area. We have a client that's a delivery company like a DoorDash,
Sure.
and they had a surge fee that
Right.
they implemented. So it was a new product, a new fee that they tried to implement as part of their service, and they named in a way that when they implemented and started presenting it to customers, the reaction was very bad. So they started seeing like a lot of clients stopped buying. They went to the final stage of like selecting the product, getting the delivery, and then when they saw the additional
Search.
fee, they stopped using.
Right.
They saw that data in their product analytics, but they couldn't understand why. Okay, I see that the
Sure.
problem is happening, but I can understand why. We had a fee before, we added this new fee, but what is the, it's not that it's necessarily an extra cost, it's just like the way
Sure.
that they package it. And then they used Birdie data to see that the problem was how they were naming the fee. Because for the clients, the fee was, it didn't make sense to pay an extra fee, and I don't remember the exact name, but it was a fee that for the client they were feeling like, why am I paying a fee for a problem that you are having as a company, because you
Right.
don't have enough delivery people to make the delivery for
Sure.
me? I need to pay because the naming was making them feel that. They
Right.
used that to rename the fee, and just by like understanding the problem and renaming the fee, so it was a very small change, the volume started to go up again. So they were
Wow.
able to add revenue, they were able to increase satisfactions, go back to the same orders, all by double clicking the voice of customer after identifying a problem that was actually surfaced somewhere else, not in Birdie in this case. And we have another client that is a real estate marketplace that last year they, for the first time after a while, the product team came to customer experience saying like, oh, we need to work on our roadmap
Hmm.
and we need your help to help us decide what's happening, because what we need to fix.
Sure.
They used Birdie information to see what were the top problems that clients were complaining, what were the things that were preventing them from moving ahead in the marketplace transaction, what was making the experience deliver worse analysis. And it was very interesting because their whole roadmap for the year was built based on customer experience data. And again, when I
Wow.
say customer experience data, is support, is NPS service, CSAT service, reviews, conversations from the sales team with the client. So all the experience on in itself. And now they're actually expanding to do the same thing for planning on other areas, for planning on sales,
Wow.
planning on marketing and stuff.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'll sidetrack a little bit beyond CX, because you as an individual, you are not just building Birdie, but I could see that you are also an active angel investor and you strongly advocate for underrepresented founders. How have these experiences shaped your perspective on leadership, on innovation, and what it truly takes to build a customer first mindset within a company?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, and it's funny because I don't know. It's almost like I don't know if Birdie came before or if the mindset came before. Probably the
Wow.
mindset came
Okay.
before. But the reason why we started Birdie is because we believe that first, customers should be respected. If you're using a product, if you're buying something, you're trusting that company, and this relationship shouldn't be broken. And showing this respect by understanding what is the problem and learning from that problem should be something that we all do. And even if your personal relationships, the better you listen
Of
and the better
course.
you adapt and build this relationship, the better are the relationships as a whole. So and with Birdie and investing, I learned that not only in the paper but in practice, because as an investor I have cases, especially I'm a more early stage investor. So when you're investing in early stage companies, you're investing in ideas
Sure.
from people. So you need to know that the person that is leading that company is coachable and is open to listening to feedback, to improve and reroute their products to get to the result that is expected. Because at the end, you only have a company that is successful if you have market for that, if you have people buying, if you have people using your products. I learned that the importance of listening to your customer and using that as an input to drive change in your company is true no matter what is the stage of your company. If you're a very early
Sure.
stage company, if you're an established company that has like hundreds of products and like millions of years, that you need to keep up to date and keep listening and keep learning. So I think like that was something that definitely proved itself true with investments I made. So people that weren't coachable and that weren't listening didn't have success, but they did it because they didn't have
Right.
the ability to adapt to what the market was telling. So definitely like that's something that I recommend, no matter how you do it, like start from the beginning to build this process and this customer centric mindset of learning from the customer. And that's where most of innovation should come. So if you want to be innovative, again, look at your customer, look at what your RCP is asking for, look at what they are needing, look at what it's important for them, and that will tell you the answer, that will tell you what to do and where to go. Looking at competition is important, but again, I think that's the most important thing. Tying to that, and for underrepresented founders, for founders that are in early stages or late stages, believing in more than your product but believing in your mission is very important, because it's not easy to be a founder. You have a lot of like bumps in the road, you have a lot of moments where things are not going to go and not going to happen the way that you expected. If you have a bigger mission behind you, if you have a reason why you're doing that more than what you're doing, that's what's going to keep you continuing and learning and iterating so you can get to the results that you expect.
How beautiful. Couldn't have been said better, Pat. Really appreciate that. In fact, that brings me to a very passionate topic of mine, Pat, which is when people ask me, what do you think customer experience leaders are custodians of? Are they custodians of NPS scores? Are they custodians of voice of customer? Are they custodians of customer sentiment? What is it that they hold accountable? Can they hold themselves accountable for? I always say it's all of this, but more importantly, it's externally, they are the custodians of the brand promise, and internally they are the custodians of the mission. Because internally, if they are able to, because there's equally voice of employee as well, which the customer experience leaders can equally drive as an initiative and take the inputs and say, if everyone's in the organization aligned to the same mission that we started with, and are we therefore working towards the same mission while driving the customer impact that we have in our mind via our brand promise. And what it does is it helps CX align with multiple functions irrespective of the conflicts and challenges, because I've seen having that conversation is enabled only by two things. One that you said, which is talking the same language as their KRAs and KPIs rather than NPS scores and CSAT scores, and the other is having common mission, which, as you rightly said, could drive the whole conversation positively. Thank you so much, Pat. I have so many questions, but I feel one conversation won't be enough for that. There are many more, but I cannot help but ask this one last question Pat, to all the CX leaders who will be listening to this conversation and who would want to future proof their CX strategy, not just for the next 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 quarters, but for the years to come, what would be your advice to them? How can CX leaders future proof their CX strategy?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think first, don't position yourself and don't see yourself as the NPS team or as the contact rate team. Like, so position yourself as a outcomes team. I'm a
Yes.
change driver team. I'm the one that is bringing the uncomfortable truth to the organization, and I'm the one that is going to help like direct all the gears, all the pieces of the engine to the right direction to addressing the customer problems. No matter the metrics are there just to help you quantify
Right.
and show the evidence for that. So I think like every time you focus too much on the metrics, you're probably forgetting what is behind it, which is the purpose
Right.
of like delivering the experience. So I think that would be like number one. Connected to that, like have this continuous improvement mindset. If you want to deliver outcomes, you need to continuously be listening and understanding and prioritizing and acting on that. That should be the wheel that you build when you're building your team, when you're building your organization. Third, and you mentioned that a little bit, like think of the customer experience. Think of the customer experience as a whole and how you're going to deliver that promise. I love when you said that delivering the brand promise, a lot of that, and that's the combination, right? And that's why I said like product should be close to customer experience,
Yes.
because the combination of both is what delivers the experience at the end, especially if you're talking about digital products, but that happens for everybody. Make sure that you have the right tools to support you. And when I say tools, is not necessarily a technology, but like all the infrastructure that you need to make that happen. Build these relationships with your stakeholders. Make sure that you understand also what they need, because in the sense of a customer, they are also your customers. You're also serving them with data to help them make the better decisions. So like look at them as partners that will help you get the results that the company needs and that you all want.
Beautiful. Couldn't have been said more succinctly. Pat, really appreciate this. Thank you so much for your time on the show. I hope you had a good time as well. And I very selfishly would want to request you for another because I have so many questions still, which I would love to ask and get insights from you on. But really thankful to you for your time and availability on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.